It's our game of the week, the Boombox Classic. How many ways can I describe Jackson State versus Southern? I have the matchups to watch and the key to victory for each team. Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey's over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE to get $20 off your first purchase. It's all about the Boombox Classic today. It's all about Jackson State versus Southern. We'll have our key to victory for each team. Remember, we're now going into two HBCUs facing each other. So unlike last week, we will have two key to victories, one per team. In segment 2, we'll have two storylines to watch. Well, I was going to do the Jackson State quarterbacks, but since it's teaser time, let's just go ahead and look at that with Southern. But we kick it off with three matchups to watch. And the first matchup that I'm looking at is Jackson State's linebackers versus Southern. And the reason I say that is because I believe these linebackers, Pulliam and Taylor, have the ability to change a game on multiple levels. So I don't think it's fair to just say the running game. And I don't think it's fair to say they're just pass coverage linebackers. I do believe that they have the athleticism to disrupt the passing and running game, whether that's through tackles for a loss, sacks, pass coverage zone. Like, I do believe that this is a very talented duo at the second level for JSU. So I wanted to say Jackson State linebackers versus Southern, and also because I seen Savannah State's linebackers impact Southern in the running game and also in the pass. So I know that the team can be affected in this aspect, and I also know that the team can affect in this aspect. So it goes both ways on why this is the premier matchup to watch. And when I'm talking to you, man, I'm talking about Reid, Pulliam. I'm talking about Ashton Taylor. Hey, I'm not gonna lie to you. I like these guys. I like them a lot because they're athletic. They fly around the field. They're difficult to miss. If you're just watching a game casually, you'll probably see Seven's hair flowing through the wind as he goes to make a tackle. You'll see 30 shooting through the line of scrimmage. The only thing that I would say, 30 is Taylor, 7 is Pulliam. The only thing I would say about Taylor is I want him to finish a little better. That's the only thing I would say about him. I think he's extremely fast. You notice him, but I've seen a few times where he gets into the backfield and he doesn't bring down the guy. And I don't think he's moving too fast. I think I may have seen once, maybe twice, where he was moving a little too fast and got into the wrong gap or something, or tried to use his athleticism to get around a block and not really, operate in true gap integrity. But for the most part, he's pretty sound and he shoots through the gap. But there's been times where he didn't make the tackle, but the Jackson State defense flows. So it doesn't really stand out, right? See, if I miss a tackle in the backfield, but then my teammate is right next to me, so it's still a 1-yard loss, no one's really having that conversation. But I do believe that they're shooting for perfection. I do believe that they're shooting for not just good enough, but greatness. And I think that though that's still valuable to the team, though you still pat your team for flying around on the back, you're probably telling Taylor, we want you to finish that tackle. And not because it could have been a negative 3-yard loss instead of a -1. It easily could have been the same amount. It's just, hey, we want you to finish because in other situations, we may not have somebody there. So that's the only thing I would say about Taylor, but he's so electric. I love watching him play in a couple of games that he's had. I've enjoyed Taylor so much. I interjected him into a conversation that genuinely and honestly didn't have that much to do with him on, I believe it was last Wednesday or a Wednesday after Wednesday before last, I guess. I don't know, man. Last week's episode on Wednesday, I believe it was. Whatever was the one where we broke the news about Andrew Body's surgery, right? Whatever episode that was is the episode in which I talked about Jackson State's new additions. Technically, Taylor wasn't even a new addition, but I enjoyed him so much that because he's a new contributor, I would say, you know what, let's go ahead and get him in there. And the same with Pulliam. Pulliam is actually a new addition, though. I think that those players are really good. I enjoy to watch them play football. And I watched Savannah State's linebackers, I thought, performed pretty well against Southern. Now, that could just be a boost to Savannah State, and maybe I'm disrespecting them by not looking at it that way. But you had a guy in Darian Bell who he had a magnificent sack on third down that forced Southern to have to go for three. And that's the play that really sticks out to me. Of all the plays I've seen by both teams, that's probably top three plays that just sticks out in my memory. You have the long 74-yard reception at the end of the game that put him at the 1 yard line. That one sticks out to me. I think Teasett had a deep shot. No, then you had the play by Savannah State's quarterback. That probably stuck out to me the most, just because it was the only positive play it felt like forever when you look at Savannah State. I actually think Savannah State was negative on all their other plays. So, but that's neither here nor there. But the point is, that sack by Darian Bell in the getting into the backfield, whether it was with a tackle for a loss, a sack on that particular play was a sack, but you seen it. And then you had his running mate, Tavere Bruton, who also had a tackle and a half for loss. So you're looking at two linebackers who got into the backfield, whether that was with sacks. You look at Bell, he had one sack, one tackle for a loss, and you had Bruton, who had a tackle and a half for loss. So I see the linebacking core of Savannah State getting in the backfield, and I like the linebacking core of Jackson State. So now it makes me wonder, is Southern going to be able to stop the duo of Pulliam and Taylor? Not if they perform like they did at certain points against Savannah State, but that's the premier one that I'm watching because I do really enjoy watching Jackson State's linebackers play the game of football. Now, the next one is Kelby Givens, because you can't talk about defense and not go to the SWAC Defensive Player of the Year in the preseason. Right? You can't do that. He's going to be a monster who you have to account for. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to have to account for Kelby Givens, right? He's going to line up. He's got that number one on. You know he's going to hoop with it, right? Because he look good in number one. You gotta play well if you're going to be a big fella in a single digit number. And I think that he did that. And I'll say this, man, being given the opportunity to sit up close and watch Southern. I don't care if they were playing Jackson State. I don't care if they're playing Savannah State. Given the ability to sit up here and watch Southern play really was great. It was a fantastic opportunity that I'm happy about. It allowed me to see these guys up close and really reference that because that helps me. That's what I like to see. I like to feel what's going on throughout the game. Kelby Givens is a guy who you're going to chip. You're going to help and run block because you know he's a tackle for loss monster. He's got 2.5 so far. He had 21 in last season, so he's on his way, right? I think with 12 games, I guess he's on his pace for a little over 12, probably he's still going to hit double digits. This guy is a monster. This guy is a genuine monster when it comes to racking up TFLs. That's what you have to watch. He could easily stop your running game. And I know Jackson State is looking to run the ball. TC Taylor said he likes to run it. And if you're going to run the ball well, you have to stop Kelby Givens because he has the ability to be a one-man wrecking show. Kelby Givens has the ability on any given Saturday to stop your entire run game, stop your entire offensive flow, put you in must-pass situations, and just disrupt your offensive rhythm. He could do that by himself. You have to send guys over there, right? You're gonna have to whether that's a extra blocker in the run game, whether that's a chip in the pass block, you're just gonna have to make sure that you're giving help towards Kelby Givens because he's the type of guy who can destroy your entire offensive plan. And then lastly, speaking about their offensive plan, I want to see Southern's rush offense versus Jackson State's rush defense. I thought that ULM did a pretty good job running on them. I did. They had a freshman in there who was the first freshman to start underneath that head coach, I believe, for ULM. Thought he ran really well. Can Southern do it? I don't know. Right? I don't. It's a drop in subdivision. Southern hasn't shown me the ability to run extremely well. I thought they have decent numbers, not great. I don't know if I would say good, but decent numbers against Savannah State. Dillon, 4.0 per carry. Rhymes 3.5 per carry, Russell 5.8 per carry, but that was only on 5 carries, so it wasn't a large sample size. Those other two guys had 13, right? But it didn't look good. It didn't even really feel like 4. But overall, those numbers probably improved when Zae Teasett got in the game. Zae Teasett probably allowed them to run the ball a little bit better, and maybe because Teasett is starting the entire game, does that then trickle down to the running backs, right? Like is that what happens now? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. But let's look at that because that's our storyline. Let's use that as a transition because the offense as a whole was choppy when Bowden was in the game. Then you guys they tease it in and things started flowing. Passing started flowing, running started flowing. I'm not saying it was great, but it was a noticeable improvement. So let's look at tease it time as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And eBay Motors is the only place that I will send you for any of your car troubles or car enhancements. I love making sure that I say both of those because there ain't always got to be something wrong. Sometimes you just want to make things better, right? Like I understand that. Sometimes you just aesthetically want to be better. You want some new rims, you want some new tires, you want new lights, you want new anything, right? Maybe you want some a new steering wheel cover, just something as useful as that. Maybe it's getting hot. It's beating down through the window. You're like, man, I need a new color that neutralizes some of the heat. I get it all. You can go get it all at ebaymotors.com. Or maybe you need to fix up your car. You need a new alternator. You need a new part for this, a new part for that. You can also do that. Hopefully that's not what you're looking for, but eBay Motors does present it. All you have to do is put your car into the My Garage section. You put your car into the My Garage section and it's right there for you. They're going to tell you like this fits, this fits, this fit, this fit, and it's going to be the guaranteed fit, which means if it doesn't fit for your car, you get your money back guaranteed. It's just that easy. Go ahead and go to ebaymotors.com and take care of your ride or die. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn. And LinkedIn Jobs is the only place that small businesses tend to go for all of their best hires, right? You can go pick somebody up, right? You know, you can get some average Joe off the street if you want to, but you go to LinkedIn. You go to LinkedIn, you're going to find the qualified people for your job. And then it's not going to take long either. You see a lot of small businesses, 86% of small businesses find the right qualified and well thought out hire for their job in the first 24 hours. And you look at a lot of people who are going for a job, they don't go anywhere else. 70%. I'm giving you numbers. I'm talking real numbers with you. Can't dispute the research. 86% of small businesses, they don't go anywhere else because they find the right candidate for their job in 24 hours. And 70% of people, they don't go anywhere else because they understand this is where all the jobs are. So where do you need to be? LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. It's really simple. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Go ahead and check out Locked On Texas. The Longhorns got a big victory over last week, and they're going to try to carry that momentum out there in the big house on to the next opponent. So go ahead and check out my guy, Jonathan Davis, and see what UT is talking about. Now, we have our two storylines as we continue with Locked On HBCU. It's teaser time. It's teaser time. It's teaser time. It's teaser time. I wish I had my mug right now so I could lift it up and be like, here you go. That's what I should do. Anytime I say it's teaser time, I should have some tea on me. It's pretty on the nail, but I think that tea would be a pretty good NIL for him. I don't know, just play into it. But, young guy, he probably ain't even drinking no tea. Anyway, it's teaser time. The redshirt freshman is going to be starting his first game for the Southern Jaguars, and rightfully so. Terrence Graves made that announcement earlier this week. I knew that this would happen. You can't take Bowden out repeatedly and keep putting him in as the starter. I don't think you can go 3 weeks. Like the team probably doesn't believe in him. Like the team can't see him continuously taken out of the game and feel like you trust him. And when they start seeing that trust wane, I can only imagine that their trust is going to wane. So overall, I thought that it was time for this. Graves talking about we haven't seen the end of Bowden. I hope so. What are you talking about? Like, I know that's probably just what you say. Don't get me wrong. I know that's just what you say. Sometimes coaches be having coach talk, and sometimes I don't catch it. Sometimes I do. But you're looking at the reason I say I don't want to see him again is because I want Teasett to take his bumps, man. Like if he struggles, let him struggle. He's a young guy. And I had a coach in the SWAC tell me straight flat, he's a guy. He was really good in high school. He's a guy. Trust me. This is going to be one of those ones. It's all right, coach. That's the type of endorsement that you want from a coach, right? Like that's the type of endorsement you want from a coach when you're going into your first start. So, this for me was the clear change that they needed. I don't even say alluded to it, but I said it at the end of segment one. Everything changed with him. Everything changed when he came into the game. I don't know what it is, right? Like, this is such a stupid comparison, but this is for my wrestling fans. Okay, so there's this group. Sorry for my wrestling fans who understand what I'm talking about, but I'm gonna break it down so everybody isn't lost, right? So there's this group called the Bloodline. It's a 4-member faction at the moment. But anytime one guy is gone, they say, man, these guys look so much better. These guys look so much better when it's just these other three. And I use that as an example to say sometimes a small change doesn't seem like much, but a small change can change how everything looks, can change how everything operates. And I know one guy being gone from a faction versus a quarterback feels a little bit different. Doesn't necessarily feel like the same thing, but it's not meant to be an exact parallel. So rock with me. But yeah, I'm a fan of it. The offense looked better. It looked like that other version of the Bloodline. I thought the running backs looked better. I thought the passing attack looked more fluent. It actually looked like you had good receiving threats. I can't say that it looked like that at the beginning of the game. I was ready to write off. I was ready to write the Jaguars off. It's just, yeah, they're definitely not it. But then Zae Teasett comes in the game, and now I changed my tune a little bit. So I'll be interested and I'll be watching very closely to see what is it that Teasett does in his first game. That being said, I don't know if I'm like, oh, well, it's got to be great. Because I think Jackson State has a pretty good defense. I believe I said this earlier. I expect him to take his lumps in this game, but you got to let him do that. I don't care what the score is. I don't care what the outcome is, unless you're blowing out Jackson State. If you're blowing out Jackson State, hey, go ahead and put Noah Bowden in. But if you're not blowing out Jackson State and you're getting beat, I don't care how bad it is. I don't care if the game feels over. I don't know if I'm putting Bowden in. I want my young guy. I'm not putting him in until I take out multiple starters. If I'm just taking out starters, then I have that conversation. But I want my young guy to understand that I have full trust in him and that this is his job. That's what I want. But yeah, so now the other part of this, the other storyline, I should say, is this is Jackson State's first FCS game. And, this is like their first litmus test. This is like Jackson State's first litmus test to see what they're really going to be. That's the thing about them, is that they faced an FBS opponent. They faced a D2 opponent. That uneven scheduling, it doesn't always give a perfect representation of what they'll be. Because who you are against an FBS team may not show. Now, granted, they performed well, so you would think it does show. Like you would think it does show. Then you play against a D2 team, you're like, okay, it's too uneven. You want somebody who's on your subdivision. And better yet for them, they have somebody who's in the conference. I feel like this is the need for the daily reminder that this is not a conference game. This is a conference opponent, yes, but this does not go into the SWAC record. It does not. After this game, neither team will be 1-0 or 0-1 in the SWAC record column. All right. I just feel like that's a necessary thing to point out because I think it's easy to forget. I think it's tripped me up a few times. I think it's actually pretty dumb. I don't really like when teams do that, when they schedule conference opponents for out of conference games. It doesn't really, it's too much hassle for me. But when it comes to the Boombox Classic, I make a little exception. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not worried about it. But in all honesty, if you see somebody playing a conference opponent this early and they're not in their division, just do a look, even if they are, right? Like, even if they are, or you're not sure, just do a quick little look. If they're in the division, you know for sure it's a conference game. I'm just letting you know they're going to play because they're not going to play twice. So it's a conference game. But if they're in a SWAC West versus a SWAC East, just go ahead and check. Because 9 times out of 10, it's not a conference game. But Go to your team schedule. If it says SWAC next to it, it's a conference game. If it isn't, it won't say it. All right. So this is their chance to really see who are we amongst people in the SWAC. I don't know how good Southern is. I don't know. I'm still on the fence about them. I got a lot to see. This is probably a bigger test for Southern than it is for Jackson State with just how I'm evaluating. But then again, if Southern comes out and they play really well and they come out and they whoop them up, oh, that's a different conversation. But if Jackson State does it, it's going to be tricky because I already think that JSU is the better team, right? Like I predict Jackson State to win this game. So because of that, I'm grading them a little bit harsher. But yeah, so let's push forward. And if Jackson State is going to win this game or Southern's going to win this game, what do they need to do? What do they need to do? I'll tell you what it is as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor Meals. And listen, I understand that sometimes eating healthy can be tricky. Whether it's time, whether it's knowing what to eat, whether it's getting repetitive, all of those things are three big deterrents to people changing their healthy or changing their diet, right? You ain't got to worry about that when it comes to Factor Meals. First off, it don't take long. 2 minutes. You pop it in the microwave. I know that you have 2 minutes. Anything you are going to eat was going to take 2 minutes, right? So that's not a long time to warm up your food. Secondly, they have a multitude of different choices, whether you want keto, protein plus, calorie deficient. And here's the other thing. They have 35 bases with 60 add-ons, which means you have a multitude of things to choose from, and you can like remix it a bunch of different ways so you don't feel like you're eating the same thing week after week after week after week. That's just knocked out everything. Time, taste. It's chef approved, dietitian approved, everything, health, taste, time. What do you need more than that? So go ahead and go to factormeals.com and use the code LOCKEDONCollege50 to get 50% off your first offer. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, if Jackson State's going to win, what do they need to do? If Southern is going to win, what do they need to do? Now, I said I believe Jackson State's going to win. I will probably regret that because I never come on here and say who I think is going to win. I never do that. It's like it's just not what I do, right? But in speaking about how I'm grading each team, I did feel the need to come out and say what I thought. I did feel the need to say that just because I thought it was important to explain. And I thought that was a necessary part of the explanation. But let's keep it easy for Southern. What do they need to do to win? And that's keep it easy for Zae Teasett, right? You need to keep it easy for Zae Teasett because this is start 1 for the redshirt freshman. Did he play last week? Yeah. Did he play the week before that? Yeah. But this is Zae Teasett's first start. And you're going up against Jackson State, who I think has shown to be a pretty solid defense. You got to keep it easy. You did against Savannah State. I thought that the crossing routes were very easy. You don't want to put him in a bunch of 3rd and long situations. This is a redshirt freshman making his first start in college, period. You don't want to heap a bunch on him, right? You don't want to do that. I already think that Jackson State's going to throw a bunch of looks at him. I think they're going to throw a bunch of pressure at him. I think you're going to see those linebackers that I spoke about rushing the passer, right? They're going to blitz. And if any of the first 2 games is an indication, they're going to get through at least a couple of times. So you want to keep it easy for Teasett. He's a nice sized quarterback. Allow him to stand back there and look. He may have to use his legs from time to time, but you want to allow him to have easy reads. You want to allow him to get easy throws. You want him to get the ball out of his hand quick if he needs to, right? Like this isn't about doubting. Sometimes we talk about making it easy on bad quarterbacks, but I think making it easy on young quarterbacks is just as valuable without the negative connotation of doubt, right? It's just about you're young. We want to allow you to grow. We want to allow you to ease into everything, okay? So then you look at Jackson State and what they need to do to win. What Jackson State needs to do to win is just win the trenches. Let's go back and look at those matchups that I had. I have the Southern run game versus the Jackson State rush defense. That's literally the trenches. That is literally the trenches. That's the offensive line versus the defensive line. That's the running backs versus the linebackers. That's all front 7 work right there. That's the trenches. You go look at the other one, Jackson State's linebackers versus Southern. I highlight rushing and passing, but in the run game, that's the trenches. Excuse me, everybody. I apologize. But that's the trenches there. I didn't look at Jackson State's pass rush, but I'm looking at their linebackers, the ability to come downhill. The one thing I highlighted about Pulliam and Taylor is their ability to come downhill. Specifically, Taylor, he's super athletic, he's really fast, and he's often in the backfield. You like these are things I'm talking about. I'm talking about the trenches. And then the last thing is Kelby Givens versus Jackson State's offensive line. What is that, ladies and gentlemen? That's the trenches. This game for Jackson State is going to come down to the trenches, whether we're talking about the linebacking core in that front seven coming downhill, getting behind the line of scrimmage, whether we're talking about the Jackson State rush defense versus the Southern rush offense, or if we're talking about the SWAC preseason defensive player of the year and Kelby Givens going against Jackson State's offensive line. All of it comes down to the trenches. And if Jackson State can win that, hello, I think we're looking at a 3-0 start. It's going to be a 2-1 start. This is the key to victory for Jackson State over everything else that they've done. This is what they have to do in order to win. All right. So if I'm looking at Jackson State, win the trenches. If I'm looking at Southern, keep it easy for Zae Teasett. First time. And here's the other thing. You have a first start quarterback. If you can rattle them, you should be able to rattle. You can rattle most guys making their first start. You got some people who just come out the gate super poised. But for the most part, I'm trying to make this guy's life a living, you know what, back there. I am. That should be the goal. I'm rushing the passer. I'm trying to throw him looks that he hasn't seen before. He's seen a D2 team, and he's seen a little bit of McNeese. I'm trying to give him some looks he ain't never seen, right? So we'll see. Also, side note about Jackson State playing SWAC competition, they play Grambling next week too. That is also not a conference game, just so we're clear. I don't have to love it, but I do have to be aware of when it's a conference game, when it isn't, when the stakes are high and when they aren't. It's kind of like a free evaluation of how you look against your peers. All right, with me. Anyway, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. We'll be back on Monday to recap this game. I may, depending on how it goes, I'm sure we'll do at least 2 segments of it, because the only reason we didn't do 2 segments of the last game is because it wasn't really competitive for the most part. It was a competitive, probably 10, 15 minutes of it in the middle of the game between Elon and Central. But also I wasn't there live. Like it was just different, right? I wanted to highlight the game I was at live. That was a different conversation. That's an exception. So we'll be back with probably at least 2 segments of the Boombox Classic on Monday. And then maybe we'll look at Eddie George talking about how he wants to face Jackson State again. So it's kind of thematic, or maybe we'll look at that on Tuesday. We'll see. I don't know, but just know we'll be back on Monday with this show. So in the meantime, between time, when we come back with the Boombox Classic to wrap up who won Southern versus Jackson State, if they use their key to victory to win, just be here, ready, same time on Monday, 6:30 p.m. Central. Come ride with me. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.